Good afternoon, Pastor Matthew, Hollywood United Methodist Church. We are continuing our journey through the Gospel of Luke in this Advent season, a chapter a day. Today we are on Luke chapter 19. Now you may be asking yourself, Pastor, chapter day started on December 1, today's the 20th, we should be doing Luke chapter 20. To those of you who have been here on this journey for a little bit, you already know what happened. We don't need to talk about it. We'll figure it out. Let's just read Luke 19. I want to say it's important a little bit as we start this. We just had, where we ended off was, let me see here, was the blind man on the road to Jericho. So we just had that where he's calling out. So I think that's relevant to this story. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. There was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was wealthy. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but couldn't because of the crowd, since he was a short man. He ran ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree to see Jesus, since he was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for today it is necessary for me to stay at your house." He hurried, came down, and welcomed him joyfully. When people saw this, they all began to complain. "He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, I will give half of my possessions to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Humanity has come to seek and save the lost." While the people were listening to these things, Jesus proceeded to tell a parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and they thought the empire of God would be revealed immediately. Therefore he said, "A man of noble birth went into a far country to receive an empire for himself and then to return. He called 10 servants of his and gave them 10 mina coins and told them, 'Y'all are to do business with this until I come back.' But his subjects hated him and sent an envoy after him to say, 'We don't want this man to be king over us.' When he received the empire in return, he summoned the servants to whom he had given the money, in order to find out what they had gained in business. The first came forward and said, 'Sir, your mina has earned 10 more minas.' The king said to him, 'Well done, good servant. Because you have been faithful with very little, you will have authority over 10 cities.' The second came and said, 'Sir, your mina has made 5 minas.' So the king said to him, 'And you are to be over 5 cities.' Then another came and said, 'Sir, look, here is your mina, which I kept safe in a handkerchief, because I was afraid you, since you are an exacting man, you withdraw what you don't deposit and reap what you didn't sow.' King said to him, 'I will judge you by the words from your own mouth, you wicked servant. You knew that I am an exacting man, withdrawing what I didn't deposit and reaping that which I didn't sow. Then why didn't you put my money in the bank, so that when I returned I could have collected it with interest?' Then he said to those standing by, 'Y'all take the mina away from him and give it to him who has the 10 minas.' They said to him, 'Sir, he has 10 minas. For I tell y'all, to everyone who has, more will be given, but from those who do not have, even what they have will be taken away. But those enemies of mine who didn't want me to be king over them, y'all bring them and kill them in front of me.' After he said these things, Jesus went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he came near to Bethpage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples, saying, 'Y'all go to the village ahead of you. Near the entrance y'all will find a colt tied, which no human has ever sat upon. Untie it, and y'all bring it here. If anyone asks y'all, why are y'all untying it, say this: the Lord needs it.' Those who were sent ahead went and found things just as they had told him. As they were untying the colt, its owners said to them, 'Why are y'all untying the colt?' They said, 'The Lord needs it.' Then they brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and had Jesus get on it. As he was going along, they spread their garments on the road. As he approached the path down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of the disciples began to rejoice and praise God with a loud voice for all the mighty works they had seen. 'Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." He answered, "I am telling y'all, if they keep silent, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, "If you, even you, had known on this day the things which would bring your peace, but now they have been hidden from your eyes. For the days will come on you when your enemies will build a barricade around you, surround you and close in on you from every side. They will throw you and your children to the ground, and they will not leave one stone on another within your borders, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation." When Jesus entered the temple, he began to drive out those who were selling, saying to them, "It is written, my house will be a house of prayer, but y'all have made it a den of robbers." He was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests, the scribes, and the leaders of the priests were trying to destroy him. They couldn't find a way to do it, because all the people were hanging on him, listening. This is the word of God for us and for many, the people of God. Thanks be to God. I've asked some other leaders to give us some thoughts on this, and our reading back a couple days ago for Luke 18, we had Terry Van Aslan, who was one of our members of Heartfelt, but I went ahead and asked the rest of Heartfelt if they would take it upon themselves, to do Luke 19, and so I've received that. Our Heartfelt team includes people like Joyce Anderson, Dee Snyder, Rick Martin, Lou Clontz, as well as Beverly Wilson, Bonnie Knight. There's a lot of different people who pop in and out of there. And so they've got some wonderful, wonderful thoughts. And so they've broken it down into 3 different things. And so let's just take a look at what they've got to say. They had a couple people who talked about Zacchaeus. And the one question, because they both come to the same point that, like, coming to Jesus, we see Zacchaeus wanting to change his ways, that's what is so important, that Zacchaeus, just like all the rest, is called to a life where he will change how he lives. But one of the members of Heartfelt asked the question, why would he want to see Jesus? Like, what's going on here? It doesn't say why he wanted to. In fact, all it seems to show originally is that he's just curious. He's heard about this Jesus guy. Maybe there is a sense, like he's a chief tax collector, which means, just a quick refresher, tax collectors were employed, air quotes, by Rome to collect taxes, but they were not paid with that. They basically said, look, we're going to give you authority to go out and collect the taxes, and we're going to tell you what we need, and if you need to collect a little more for yourself, go right on ahead. Just make sure you pay to us what we owe. So he's the chief tax collector. So 2 things is, number one, if you're thinking about pyramid schemes and like multi-level marketing, it's just somebody he's higher up and is collecting maybe percentages, commissions from those below him, or maybe he actually does get some kickbacks from Rome for being the one who's kind of in charge of the tax collectors. We'll see about that in a minute. But we don't really know. Maybe he's curious because he just hears this Jesus guy, seems like a big thing. Maybe I want to see him. Maybe there's a sense that he has been wanting to change, right? He would have been castigated by his people. He's seen as not just a sinner, but a traitor. He is seen as somebody who stands against God's people. And so maybe he's heard about this Jesus guy, knows that he's got tax collectors with him, and maybe he sees it as an opportunity to make himself right, to make amends, either from a perspective of just of actual, genuine repentance, or maybe it's a situation where he's like, okay, this is a means to an end for me, an end of my neighbors not hating me. But it doesn't tell us that. It just says he wanted to see him, which makes it even more interesting to think about, is that when we first see Zacchaeus, all we know is that he wants to see Jesus. That's it. Just wants to see Jesus. But then seeing Jesus, and more importantly, being seen by Jesus, makes him change things, causes him to say, hold on, this is what I am going to do. Although I will confess, I just thought about it as we were reading it today. Depending on how he got his money, when he says, I'm going to give half to the poor, and then if I've wronged anybody, I'll give it back. Depending on where he got it, it's wonder to say how he could have any money that he did not get by wronging somebody. So that's going to be something for me to think about. So then moving on to the parable of the person who goes off into it, both of the people who wrote for Heartfelt, they both felt that Jesus was talking about himself as the one who went into a foreign land to to acquire more land, to become a king of more places, and that most of these people, what they both kind of see is this idea that maybe the minus the coins are kind of gifts and graces. Are you using that? Are you understanding? And number one, did nothing to help other people, right? It's one, he didn't invest to try to make more for himself, more for his king, but he also just didn't use it to help. Be interesting if there was somebody who basically said, "King, I got nothing because I used it all to feed people." Be an interesting thing to kind of think about. But both of them, what I think is so interesting about the guy who at the end who gets taken away from him, the king says very clearly, he says, "I'm going to use your own words to judge you. You thought I was a king who was hard and was demanding and reaped what I didn't sow and withdrew what I didn't deposit, but if that's what you think, okay, then that's what you are going to get." What's interesting is that there's that first little bit is the ones who, before the king even goes away, the ones who did not want him to be king over those. And somebody said, is that just the people who don't want to follow Jesus and instead chose evil lives? It's an interesting thing because usually in this parable, that's not something that we talk about, is these people who said from the beginning, we don't even want this guy to be king. This is not what we want, which is to say, we don't want him to come back. I'm interested there. I'm thinking of this if indeed we are seeing the parable as kind of a thing of Jesus, at his ascension, his eventual ascension, and then he's going to come back and see what we have done with it. Are there those that would say, Jesus, I'm just not good? Not because I'm not ready, I haven't lived a life that I feel like if I'm judged now, I'm going to be... it's not going to be good for me, but just this idea also of like, my life's pretty good, Jesus. I know that things ain't great, but it's actually, I'm doing pretty good. So maybe just hold off a little bit. That could be an interesting thing. Look, a cat right there. That's a really interesting thing to think about, and I'm glad that one of the Heartfelt people made sure we thought about that one. And then at the end, talking about Jerusalem, seeing what's going on there. It's again that sort of sense that Jerusalem, yes, it is where the temple is, it is where God's house is, but it's also obviously where Rome is very strong as well. Because if you're going to come in, look, you look at any sort of country, as we're sitting here, think about any sort of invasion, think about Ukraine being invaded by Russia. Like, one of the things they often said, where were they going? Kyiv, right? Because having Kyiv meant you had it. In the same way, having Jerusalem meant you have it, meant you could not just have the power, you have the capital, you have it, but also the powers that be that are there, you can kind of work and use them. And so then, of course, we get one of the other. That's what the first person part felt like. Two people did each one, and then, but the temple is an interesting thing to kind of think about too. Is we've got the temple. It's a person said, Mark's about being angered, being used as a marketing place, casting them all out, being a house of prayer. What I think is so interesting here with the temple is that, yes, God's house should be a house of prayer. And of course, when Rome comes in, they're going to want to use the temple for as a means to their end. We talked about this a few months ago when I was preaching on one of the prophets, can't remember which one it was, talking about the rebuilding of the temple and God's thing. But what do we use it for? And you've turned it into a den of thieves is one that gets talked about a lot. One of the things that I found just so poignant a few years ago is understanding is that, like, a den of thieves, they don't steal in their own den, right? Honor among thieves type of situation is that, like, a den of thieves is where they go back and take the bad stuff they've done out around and have brought it back. And so it's an interesting way to think about that. It was like, it's not, maybe it wasn't what was going on in the temple that was the problem. It was more about, was there a big discrepancy from how you lived in the, how you conducted yourselves, how you ordered your life when you were in the temple versus how you did it everywhere else. And if the thieves of a den go out, rob, steal, make their own money, and then bring it back to the den, then what does it say maybe about the offerings that people are bringing, whether they are Pharisees or anybody else? Um, that's maybe that's an interesting thing to think about. Um, and so yeah, thank you to our Heartfelt team for just the work they do with Heartfelt, which is our backpack program, filling empty little tummies, feeding them little tummies at Hollywood Elementary. Thank them for that. Thank you for your thoughts on this. I will see y'all tomorrow, 10 o'clock, our final Sunday in the season of Advent, where we will light the candle of love as we prepare for Christmas Eve this Wednesday, when we will light the Christ candle. Have a wonderful evening, y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow.